Best known for playing Caroline Forbes on The Vampire Diaries, The Originals, and Legacies, today's guest, we have Candice King.
In today's conversation, Candice talks about playing Caroline and her devoted fan base, upcoming projects, and her podcast, Superbloom, where she is inspiring and helping others to superbloom into their next chapter.
Happy listening. Well, Candice, thank you so much for being on today. We're so excited to talk to you. I feel like you have such an incredible story, in terms of the characters you played, specifically Caroline.
Yes.
It's across multiple it's like that franchise continues to give.
Yeah.
As well as talk about, obviously, you have it above your head, a Superbloom podcast.
Yes. No, thank you.
No, it's great to have you. And one of the things we're trying to do with In Her Words is we love talking about projects and we love big announcements, but we want to hear your story. So we want our guests and you specifically to talk about what was your path to where you are? Did you start out as wanting to be an actress? We know we'll get to that in a minute, the singing, the acting, the podcast, all the different things, but our guests love to hear your journey, your personal story of how you got, how you got to where you are today, how you got through all of the successes you've had.
Oh my. It's funny. I remember, so after booking this makes me think of after I booked the Vampire Diaries and we began filming and we finished our first season, I went back to LA for a few months and did a whole bunch of things called general meetings. And it's kind of like a weird form of like business dating where you're just meeting a bunch of people so they know who you are, but very rarely are any of these meetings followed up with anything is what I've learned. But you get this like nutshell version of who you are and how you got there. And I had this like nutshell version of my story for a very long time. And I got so used to it that I thought it was just like a pretty standard trajectory, only to realize now that it's very random. A lot of it doesn't make sense. And some of my favorite people that I've met in the entertainment industry very rarely have a trajectory that makes sense, where they knew from day one that that's what they were going to do in life, and then they just did it. So I had no intentions on ever being an actor. I actually started off in music, as to what you were saying. I had decided from a very young age that I wanted to be a global pop superstar, as one does from their bedroom at the age of 7 in Orlando, Florida.
Were you singing into your hairbrush or did you actually have a mic?
Did I what?
I said, were you singing into your hairbrush or did you have the plastic mic?
I had a hairbrush for a few years, which my mom would always say, like, we knew you were destined because you'd sing into your hairbrush. And now as a mother of 2 daughters, I'm like, no, they all do it. Like, let's be honest. Every child sings into a hairbrush at one point or another. I remember distinctly singing. I was singing Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas. And I remember someone's mom, like a parent, told me that I had a good voice. And then I just started bugging my own mother about wanting piano lessons and singing lessons. And so from the time I was 7 years old, they got me into music lessons and I just never stopped. I decided I wanted to make a girl group. So I drew up little flyers at my school, and by 5th grade had, like, I'm doing air quotes here, auditions at my house. And just, it was a tough audition process, 5 for 5. Everyone who auditioned got in. And I just, and then from there, I pursued a solo career by the weathered age of 12, just really needing to pivot my direction. But I was just always singing and performing. We performed, whether it was from a very young age doing, retirement homes. We'd go in and do like community service acts where with like little karaoke machines, we'd perform at, various retirement homes and communities, to then doing like, Christmas festivals and parades I just was always doing it. And which would lead me to around the age of 16, which is when I found myself now pivoting, even really committing to it. We had met a music producer in Orlando who I was writing with. I would go and rehearse every day after school. I was recording all the time. And it was just such happenstance. I had a demo that my dad is a cardiovascular surgeon. He is very successful within his field, but his field is very different from the music industry, obviously. So, but he knew a lot of people, and he just sent my demo to as many people as he could that he would meet along the way. And it ended up on, I don't know how it ended up on an accountant's desk at a record label. But it did. And then that accountant introduced me to the right person from there. And it's like a very, some people go through the front door. I've realized I'm more of like a back basement door, but then through the crawl space kind of gal.
But you made it.
But I made it. And
that's what matters.
Yeah. And it brought me to LA. I had it by 16. I had a development deal, and which is something they used to do back in the day, which is sign you and basically support you in your efforts to go and write with a bunch of producers and writers and figure out your sound and who you were going to be as an artist. And they would kind of nurture you through that process. And I had 6 songs, and I was pitched to a few record labels. And within a few months of living in LA, I had a major label record deal and a publishing deal. And so it happened very fast. And I did not go back to high school. I finished through correspondence, and then just found myself in Los Angeles at the age of 16.
Wow.
Going, now what do I do? I had this big goal I was working towards, and now I got it. Now what happens next?
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. So what did happen next? How was life on the road and being a pop star?
Well, I
And
did
that
not
segue
become a
into
pop star. I I I learned a lot in those couple of years. I made a full record. I within that period of time, I was actually asked by my record label to start acting as a way to promote myself. So this was around the mid 2000s, around like 2005, 2006, when, the popularity of, you would see the Newlyweds on, Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey and
I forgot about that show.
Yeah. And so it was such a foolproof way of doing it. You'd have a reality show where almost every single episode you would be launching or teasing a new song, and then you'd release the album at the end of the season, and people would rush to buy the album because they've been slowly listening to it. And this was back when, like, that's what you did. You went to a record store and you bought a whole album.
Yes.
Which is crazy that it's not that long ago, and everything's different now. But so I was pitched for a reality show, and I was too boring. I didn't have anything going on. Not enough drama. My producers got put on the road, so then that got stalled. I kept hitting roadblocks. And by the time that I did start they were like, well, we want to see you out and about. Like, we need to see you in magazines. And, I was very young, and I look back and realize that I just was, I was 17, and at a point where I had no idea who I was. And it's very, and I now look back on that time with grace, being put in front of a room full of adults, mostly men, saying like, you need to know who you are or go be this other person. And for a 17-year-old girl who doesn't know who she is, it's very, I have a much better understanding for that period of time in my life. But I did not become an international pop star. I did get dropped from my record label by 18. And funny enough, I had actually begun acting, and I had an acting manager. And so I continued to work with them. So that's how I got into acting. It was, if you want your record to come out, you need to end up on a show like One Tree Hill. Go book One Tree Hill. And I never did. I bombed that audition, which is so funny to, on the backside, end up working on the CW many years later. But I still, loved the experience of being in music. I love music. I save my vocal stylings for the shower and for my daughter these days. I did tour as a backup singer for a while, which was very fun and really kept me financially afloat, because there was a writer's strike in which the film and television industry kind of shut down, for a period of months back in 2008 or 2009. 2008. And then by the time I got back, I was like, well, I think I'm going to commit to this acting gig, because I also got fired as being a backup singer. So the theme of this is sometimes you just need to get fired a lot.
But like, but how did that, how did you approach that? It's like, I can only fathom, like, you from 7 years old until 16, you have these huge dreams, and then you start to understand, or it's like you learn at a very early age how to redefine success for yourself and what those dreams look like. Now, that had to be a huge pivot for you at 17.
Very big pivot. I also, I had to like this, it's that young, naive, like, but it's all going to work out, which I think, is important to have. And I think there is a period of time in life where you lose that and then you have to find it again. And I was just so, I just knew I was going to be okay. I don't know why. And I always was working towards something, I always kept myself busy. At the time I was also a personal assistant for a while, like I was always doing things,
Always
and they
a
were
hustle.
always a hustle. But by the time I got off the road as a backup singer, I decided to really give, acting my full attention. I signed up for many courses and intensives, and it was just that sweet spot of timing. It was my first pilot season, which is now feels like an archaic, time period in the film and television entertainment industry. But it's where, you used to basically audition for television series at the beginning of the year, between like late February and April is when all the major networks would audition for their big series. And so it was just like the busiest time of year as an actor. And it was my first one. And I tested, which means it was down to me and one other person for 3 different series, which I've learned is not actually that common. It was just this sweet spot. And I got Vampire Diaries. It was my first pilot season. I was 21 years old, and it completely changed my life. And then I very quickly realized how much I not only loved the job, but I just loved it. I loved it. And so sometimes I think you can work towards a goal and realize that you have to leave room for surprises along the way. And again, I got very, very lucky. It doesn't mean I didn't work hard. It doesn't mean that I wasn't like crawling through some back doors and kind of finding myself in the right room at the right time. But I also, like, I recognize how lucky that is now looking back.
With the pivots that you had to make, I keep thinking back at it. I don't want to say your generation, and I am much older than you, but I feel like there's such a bravery in your story of, I'm a singer, but someone says that I need to try acting, so I'm okay trying acting. And there's just these multi-hyphenates that happen now that didn't used to happen in the entertainment industry. If you were a TV actress, that's what you were. If you were a singer, that's what you were. And do you think that is a generational or a cultural shift, being more comfortable with trying all this? You write, you sing, you do all of these things, and it seems to be it just seems very brave to me that you're able to try those things.
Well, this was also a time when, yes, multi-hyphenate was like the buzzword. But this was also pre-social media. This was multi-hyphenate where like people would be on a reality show and in a movie and have like a water company. Like this is when like everyone had a water company. In weird,
lot of water.
Lots of waters.
Yes.
It was just the most bizarre trend ever of like within the hyphenates. Again, I was very young. I also, as I age and go to continue my journey throughout therapy, in my hopefully wiser years, I am a people pleaser. Like I want to be good. I want to win. I want to get the A. I want to do a good job. And so I do throw myself towards things with all of that intention to the best of my ability. And so I think there's just like a part of my personality that also lends itself to, if someone's like, hey, you're kind of good at this, I'm like, great, I got to figure it out, like, and be the best at it. And so that kind of paired with it as well. But it also wasn't a cool time to just do television. I mean, I after I was off the road as a backup singer, because I got fired, I like was dropped from the label. Anytime I was trying to pick up anything in music, I just was shut down. And I really learned being a backup singer for an actual international global superstar. I was like, oh, that's what they're supposed to do in life. I am not at that level, and that's okay. So I definitely had a very big like aha moment touring for an actual superstar, and like the talent and bravado, or what, the grandiose like personality that entails, and it just is not me, and that's completely okay. But I made a list of all the goals that I made a list of goals. And one of them was I wanted to book a television show and be on it for at least 4 years, which used to be the magic sweet spot of syndication. So, but I loved TV. Even now, like if someone asks me about movies, I'm like, oh, please don't ask me about movies. This is not my forte, but television is my thing. And this was at a time in, the late 2000s where as actors, people were like kind of still embarrassed about TV. It's not what it was now. I mean, I remember, going to an event and there was like a young, like very good looking around, in his early 20s, around my age guy. And he'd like just gotten in from Australia. And he was at this event, and a group of us are all talking, and he's just like excited for his pilot season. And I'm working on the show already on Vampire Diaries. And he just was like, yeah, like he was late to the event because he was complaining because valet was too expensive. And then he started talking about how, he just got here from Australia and he's so excited to audition for pilot season, but it's all like ridiculous and dumb. He just wants to be a movie star. How embarrassing it would be to end up on like one of those dumb CW shows.
Oof,
I was just nodding my head and letting him talk. And he was like, so what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm an actress on one of those dumb CW shows. And I was on time to this party because I could afford the valet parking. It worked out great sometime. But I loved it. Even now, like I love television. I mean, I worked on that show for 8 years and then even played on the 2 spinoffs of it. I love the family environment. I love set life. I watch an insane amount of television. It is definitely like that's my world. So I think it was just like a blend of just being so young and also just like eager to do good. It's still feeding that like I want to do good. I want to get the gold star. I want my parents to be proud of me, and I want like, and masking. And then what you learn in adulthood is like realize like at the time it's what defined me. And then, as you grow older, you start to be like, oh, that's actually, I can't wear that as who I am anymore. I have to be who I am. That's not who I am. But that's a whole other part of the conversation.
It's like the Vampire Diaries kind of took the world by storm, right? It's like, how did that change your life? It's like that kind of it was like overnight success. It's like, it just became such a fan, everybody fans flock to it. They still flock to you. It's like, what was that like for you? It's like at 21 years old.
Well, that's what the other funny thing is. We filmed in Atlanta, Georgia. We filmed the pilot of the Vampire Diaries, episode 1 in Vancouver. And this was right when they did some like really big tax breaks in Georgia. So we ended up all living there. And at the time there was only Drop Dead Diva, Vampire Diaries, and The Walking Dead. I don't even know if The Walking Dead had started yet, but there was nothing filming there. So it wasn't like the show came out and we're like, everything's different. It was just, it honestly felt like, wait, people watch this? Nothing changed. The only thing that changed is I lived with my aunt and uncle for a year so I could save money during season 1. And then I moved into my own apartment and I had like money to buy like nice wine and I could like, like that's it. That's what changed. I could actually like enjoy dinners and meals and get my nails done and not like stress.
And pay for valet.
Did you feel
and
like
I could pay and I could continue paying for valet? That's it.
do you feel like that protected you in some way from like the fame in Hollywood? Because it's like, if you look back on some of the series, obviously before social media, there are a lot of actors and actresses that said, you know, because we were filming in, you know, this remote location, you know, for X amount of years, we never really had the fame right in our faces. We didn't have the parties at night. You know, it was the cast that was very secluded because we were, you know, in the middle of, you know, nowhere, North Carolina or something along those lines. Do you feel like that protected you a little bit from like the LA type lifestyle at that point?
Oh yeah. And also, I mean, look, I lived a very LA type lifestyle when I was younger. Like in those years of being in LA from 17 to 21, I mean, I was out. I was at the opening, like that Club Ledoux where they used to film The Hills. I was there opening night. I knew all the bouncers by name. I lived a very fun LA lifestyle for a period of time. And so it was such a breath of fresh air to, you know, I lived in Atlanta as a young child. I had family there. You know, we all as a cast went to my aunt and uncle's lake house, you know, and hung out. Now multiple people from the production own houses on the lake because of like those initial memories. Like we had such a magical experience. It doesn't mean we didn't have a really fun time, you know,
Yeah.
because the other thing was because we were in Atlanta where a lot of the department heads, like people that are in charge of different departments within a television series, they were flown in. You know, they were relocated for the job, as were we. But for a lot of the more junior positions within these departments, even camera department, a lot of people were local and they were younger because they were still gaining experience. So not only as a cast were we all essentially in our 20s, but a lot of our crew was also in their 20s. So we were just a young
That's
bunch
fun.
and we had so much fun. We would end work on a Friday at like midnight and go to our favorite wine bar and then all hang out and decompress for the week and then like see each other at 6 a.m. on Monday to do it all over again. And I've, you know, I've had the opportunity to get to know a few different actors who were on very successful shows at the same time, who filmed in New York or filmed in LA. And it was just such a different experience. So I'm very grateful. I mean, yes, of course, like, you know, things changed. People were recognized, you know, especially I think for Nina, Ian, and Paul, who were really thrust at the forefront of the PR, you know, wheel
Yeah.
at the time. And so they were they were really pushed to the limits, especially that first season between their filming schedule and their PR schedule. And you know, I gotta say, the rest of us kind of got to just work and have a good time. It was pretty awesome.
Let's talk a little bit about the fan base of Vampire Diaries and the spinoffs. I mean, they are still with you and still such avid, there's still such a fan base. What do you think that was, that moment in time that the show was created and the fan base, and that they're still following you and the other, you know, the other actors that you mentioned? Why were they so different?
I think it is, I mean, timing, perfect combination of a lot of things. One, I will always say the structurally storytelling of the show, the way that it was written,
Mhm.
it is like so binge worthy, you know,
Right.
just
Yeah.
the
Right.
way in which the show is written. And it's all these like amazing, like love stories, but and then like with the vamp, but it's just the way that the show was written, I think just hook, line, and sinker every
It
time.
holds up.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%, especially if we've learned anything or if I've seen anything coming off of the pandemic as far as how people respond
Mhm.
to the show that has obviously there's way more going on with the pandemic, but what I've seen as people come up is they say that they've rewatched it or they've watched it for the first time. Like
Yeah.
even though we all get older, there's absolutely a running joke right now that like the fans just stay the same age because you can stream
Yeah.
everything.
Well, the pandemic did that to a lot of shows. It's like there was a whole resurgence of Dawson's Creek
Yep.
during the
Yes.
pandemic, which was like
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, my
It's a new
daughter, who's
generation.
15, 60s, watched Vampire Diaries this last, like she thought she discovered it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the new. But that, yeah,
Yeah.
that no, it does hold up.
Yeah, it holds up. I think also the fact that there was this, again, a sweet spot of, it was still the way that you would digest television, which is one episode a week. So it's still the water cooler way of doing it.
Yeah.
You'd have to wait till the following week to watch it. And it was really like the popularity of Twitter was around this time too. So Twitter had like just begun being a thing when we were filming the pilot. And I remember Kat Graham was the first one on it. She was telling everyone like, yeah, I'm tweeting. And everyone's like, what does this mean? And then cut to a few months later, the show premieres. All of the writers are on Twitter because it was a lot of writers at first. And all of us cast members were so eager just to like not get killed off the show that we're like, yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'll follow you on Twitter. Well, let's be friends on Twitter. And then cut to within a year of that, it is like things that are trending and hashtags of relationship, characters that are trending. I mean, that was a big part of. I played a character named Caroline Forbes. There was another character called Klaus who came in, and our two characters were never supposed to be romantically involved ever. And the night there's like an episode that showed where Caroline's a damsel in distress, and Klaus comes and saves the day. And it was not even a romantic scene, but somehow the way that it kind of was portrayed to the world, everyone just went nuts for it. And it went like hashtag Caroline. And the writers were like, oh my gosh, they really like this. So then they would write, for the fans and be like, well, they really like this pairing, so we'll just tease them. And so it was really, that was another thing. It almost became this like open dialogue and immediate feedback from the fandom to like not only the people working on the show as the face of it, but the creators behind it. And it was nice. It wasn't mean yet. It wasn't like this like pit of despair and like threats.
It was like everybody loved the rom-com aspect of the show. Like it was all sweet and lovely. It wasn't like an AMA on Reddit.
Yeah,
exactly.
The Reddit subgroups did not exist yet, which
so it was huge. I mean, of course, there were other vampire series that were popular at the time, like True Blood and like Twilight. Twilight, yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Twilight was around the same time.
Yeah, but I do think like I miss that form of television. Like I have a hard time with binging shows, and I do hope it goes back to a certain degree of like one episode a week, because it keeps you, it's part of your routine then.
But also it allows you to like have the conversation when you know the beginning, the middle, and the end. The next day, it's like the water cooler and the connection that you create with people over the content. It goes away really quickly because it's a flash in the pan versus, bringing you back to it, where you can have like, it would take up a week's worth of conversation around one episode. Will they or won't they? It's like, think about like Mad About You back, when they were like, when we were all kids.
90210.
It was like,
there's so many that you just talked about all the time.
And it would be weeks on end of conversations and connections with your friends and talking, and it would inform you and, kind of make you more creative about it. Like, where are they going to take it? And now it's like, okay, I watched 30 episodes last night. I skimmed them. This is, and I'm done. And I'm done. And it's like, it kind of changed the whole zeitgeist, around the shows and these moments in time.
Honestly, that's part of why I love the Housewives franchises so much. Like I love them for many reasons. But I love that like it's part of my week, and I have friends that also watch it. And even if it's friends that we live in different states, if there's a big episode on, we don't have to talk about like, how are you? What's going on? We can just be like, oh my gosh, did you see this moment? Oh my gosh, can you believe it? Like she's getting arrested. What? Like, and it can just be that. And it feels very fun and light in a world that can often feel heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of, which kind of leads me to a Superbloom podcast, just because it's like, you've started this podcast to really help or have these conversations around creating a Superbloom in your own life. It's like, when did you come up with a Superbloom podcast idea?
I knew that I've really enjoyed podcasting. I've done it for years now. I had a podcast. It still exists with a friend of mine. And just with moving, in schedules and momming and all the things, it was just time to kind of refigure out a new schedule of like how I would be able to do this, you know, which also fits my children's schedule, and how I can, do all the things. The funny joke that we like to convince ourselves as parents or moms or women, that like we can do it all, and it's like, no, you can't do it all at the same time. You gotta make
Right,
space for
right.
other things. And I knew I wanted to do another podcast. I knew I needed a name. And there's a song by a great band called Mr. Wives called Superbloom. And it just got me like hooked on like what a super bloom is. I got very curious. It's a bop. It's a great song. Highly recommend listening to it. But then I thought back of I've been to a super bloom. I've actually been to one. And it was the California Poppy Super Bloom in 2020. And I was there with at the time, she would have been 4. And it was our first time out of the house. We were homeschooling because it was like 2020,
The thick of
pretty
it.
soon
Yeah.
after this shutdown. Yeah. And I was just like, I got to get out of this house and go somewhere safe and out and free. And I want my daughter to like not be staring inside anymore. I want her to like go and run. And so we went out to the Poppy Super Bloom. We brought masks. I look back now, and it was just this moment of peace within uncertainty. And when I then started thinking, like, I didn't know the actual definition of a super bloom or why super bloom has happened, and I started researching that. And so a super bloom is actually a botanical phenomenon. It does not happen every year. In order for a super bloom to happen, and it's only in desert landscapes. That's the other thing. It's specific to a desert landscape. And in order for a super bloom to happen, you have to have an unusually wet, rainy season. It has to rain very, very heavy. And that heavy, heavy rain is necessary because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the soil matrix and nurtures the seeds that are waiting below. And unless that you have the weight of that heavy rain, it won't reach the seeds to nurture them. And then the seeds, because they've been nurtured by the water, are finally able to grow and grow stronger and grow through all the desert landscape. And then all at once, they super bloom.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
I just loved this concept. And in my own personal life, I had found myself, that I discuss in the first episode, deep within the soil matrix of life,
Yeah.
and needing, just instead of just trying to push away the rain and away the weight of my own life events that was happening, I decided to embrace them and hear them and listen to them and ask them to teach me what I needed to be stronger on the other side. And I've spoken to so many people who've been through their own versions of that. And I wanted to make a space where we could have those kinds of conversations.
That's so beautiful. And it's such a metaphor for life. It's, everybody needs a super bloom, I feel like, in their life.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been wonderful. I mean, look, podcasting is so fun because you get to have these like magical, yummy conversations with people that you otherwise would not have had. And
Yeah.
I crave that. That is like my favorite thing. If I could also have a podcast just at airport bars, like I feel like this is an untapped resource.
Dispatches from airports everywhere.
There's nothing more than just like sitting alone at an airport bar, just like waiting for whoever is gonna sit next to me, and they poor things, like they just don't even know. Like they better not have to catch a flight in 5 minutes because I'm gonna get their whole life story.
Oh, that's so funny.
But I love talking to strangers at airports. I love it. I love just talking to strangers. I love, human connections that are only there for that fleeting moment. And because they do mean something. Like I've had more meaningful life moments in those meaningless moments than I have in like purposeful, like, oh, this is going to be an important thing I will remember forever. And sometimes it's the insignificant that is the most significant. And And so that is something I've really loved about podcasting. I get very socially nervous to like go and introduce myself to people. I'm like I know everyone says like don't meet your heroes. Like I never have to worry about that because I would be hiding in the corner, like looking at them from afar. I'm too nervous to talk to them. And this kind of breaks me out of my shell to be able to reach out to people I really admire and ask them things that I ask them questions.
That's incredible. Do you feel like do you feel that, so how do you choose your guests to come on, in terms of how does Superbloom kind of roll into it? How do you find the folks that you feel have those inspiring stories, or do you feel everybody has it's like, obviously everybody has an inspiring story if you dig deep enough for it, but
everyone has an inspiring story. It's a lot of it is like what I kind of nerd out on a little bit. I love looking for guests. I have friends, like I just had Tanya Rad on to talk about her new book, The Sunshine Mind. I've known her for a very long time. But I also had like Heather Gay in her book Bad Mormon, and anyone can be like, oh, she's just a housewife, and it's like no. It's really like she's talking about breaking away from a religion in which she defined her entire identity in life by for a very long time, which a lot of people struggle with and relate to. And in adulthood, when you start questioning things in the way that you were raised and see how then it impacted all these life decisions that you've made, and when you are finally like giving yourself permission to break free from that cycle, like that is huge. So that was a really wonderful conversation. I also had the opportunity to sit down with Amanda Knox, which was just one, if you can listen to any interview that Amanda Knox has done over these last couple of years, highly recommend. Like what a wise woman.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize her and I are the same age. Like all those years when like it's just blows my mind what she was put through and how wonderfully she's come out the other side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And also for her right now, she's a mother to a young daughter. Like the way that she's now, reflecting on her experiences as a young woman and how she can now hold the hand of her daughter as she raises her. I mean, and like that blew my mind. And then I also I don't know if you guys caught like NASA, like basically there's a plan now if there's ever a large asteroid coming towards Earth. And so I got to speak with the woman who led this whole mission in the fall and who basically is like the Bruce Willis of the world. And she's like this badass mom of 3 boys, and it's very, very fun. So my version of finding guests is usually just like, reading articles and people that I start to nerd out on.
Oh, that's so cool. Are you looking for any sort of, as you have a passion for television, are there any sort of projects that you're looking to do moving forward, or any sort of genres?
Absolutely. I would love to be back on a television set. It feels like a very different business. I'm always looking, my running joke is I've always been on the hunt for a book and for articles and kind of creating my own ideas that I'm bugging people with all the time. And, like I think the perfect example is like I had this cold case article that I just was like obsessed with it. And, for a very long time, I was like telling people, and then I was creating this whole like other scenario, and then they solved the cold case. And I was like, well, it's solved now.
It has a happy end, or not a happy
yeah.
ending.
All right. There's so many incredible like female driven stories that I wanted to tell, or like there's this wonderful woman who I don't want to go too much into her story out of respect, because by the time I did track her down and get her on the phone for an hour, she was like, please don't. She was like, I don't want a story about my life made. Like many people come after it. She was like, you're the closest I've been wanting to potentially give to, but no, I'm just, and so you just keep trying to stay creative and see what the next thing is. But yeah, no, I love television and I'm very much looking forward to being back on a set whenever it's time. I also have very young children, I have to remind myself. And so, sometimes when I start thinking too far into that kind of grass is greener, I go, wait. I have a 2-year-old. Like, she's only
Yeah.
2, and I know how fast it goes. And, this is also a huge blessing that I'm able to, kind of calling back to when you mentioned that there's still so many fans of the Vampire Diaries, and it's such a supportive fandom. Like, the fact that I attend Comic-Cons and appearances, and, I have such a wonderful way to be able to, work on my social media as well as enjoy my social media just as a human. But it's, a tool in which I can have wonderful partnerships and promotions. And so that allows me to be able um, to work, be a working mom, and also like home with my kids in this very fleeting time. So I'm trying to really hold on to that and appreciate it, because I know how quickly it can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
As these next projects come, did you enjoy the movie that you just did this fall with that was a true life, a true crime story? Did you enjoy playing that character, or a real life character versus such a fantasy character from Vampire Diaries? Do you like both, or how did that come about?
I honestly like working. Like, I love being on a set. My dream is, like, if I had to pick one dream, it would just be like a comedy or a rom-com where I just don't have to cry, or any character that doesn't have to cry. I'm like the
Okay.
one actor that like hates crying on cue on set. It stresses me out. So if I could just go and laugh all the time, and like, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I did a movie with Lifetime. It was one of their ripped from the headlines.
Right.
It was the Melanie McGuire story.
Uh,
And oh my gosh, did I do the biggest deep dive ever. There's a fantastic podcast actually with these two criminologists who also are professors, and they created this podcast to basically deep dive into cases of where people are saying I didn't do it, very much like Serial.
Yeah.
And so they took on Melanie's case, and just like for 13 episodes just like ripped it apart and did hours and hours and hours of interviews with Melanie from prison. So Melanie McGuire, if you don't know her story, is she was a fertility nurse in New Jersey who is in prison for killing her husband. And so there are so many twists and turns to this case. I think that the reason and why she's in prison is like there's absolutely reasonable doubt in this case. 100% reasonable doubt in this case. I will never understand how based off of like what the prosecuting team came in with, that's why she was imprisoned, because none of it makes sense to me. But I did the biggest deep dive to the point where even everyone on the production was like, okay, I get it. We get that this is your opinion, but we also have to follow the script. And I was like, I know, but hold on this date, here's the paperwork, here's the picture, like I really do I love a true crime deep dive, and hers is a really fascinating story. So if you need one, check out Direct Appeal. You can also watch the movie on Lifetime, the Melanie McGuire story, but also do your homework. I went deep in. I mean, I was even in the Reddit
Like
chat
all the
room.
ways
Yeah.
all the way down
Oh
the
yeah,
rabbit
it
hole.
got very.
Did you find the research more fun than the actual role?
Yeah, I don't know. Both were. I mean, look, working on those films are very intense because it happens very quick. Like you film those in like 2 to 3 weeks, which are insane. It's an insane schedule for that many pages. So you just don't even have a minute to rest your brain. And then again, I'm a mom, so I had my kids with me for one of the weekends, and it was just a lot. And it was at a time in my life where honestly, I really needed the distraction. Emotionally, it was such a gift to get out of my own head, and not to be like, I got out of my head and into a character, but I got out of my head and just got to, it allowed me to have permission to just like only think about one thing.
Yeah.
And instead of me feeling guilty or being like, oh, I should be more productive, it was like that was my version of being productive, was doing my favorite thing, which is just like becoming obsessed with something.
That's awesome. Do you, one of the things you had mentioned before is just being 16, 17, and you had all of these different people kind of telling you, well, if you don't know who you are, be this person, right? And you seem very grounded. It's like, how do you ground yourself at this point? Like, how do you feel that you have like a handle on, who you are and where you want to go moving forward?
Yes, more so now than ever. And it feels really nice to say that after the year that I've had. I mean, the shortest version of it is I'm still currently in the middle. I'm separated and in the middle of a divorce still. And so I just I've had to have not only, thank God for therapy. I'm like such a huge advocate for therapy. I've been in and out of therapy ever since I was 18 years old. I love it. I love it so much. Um, but there is like it's in the small moments. It's for instance, like
Yeah.
I just got back from a vacation with me and my two daughters, and it was the three of us, and we did it. Like I did it. I did the airplane. We did the beach vacation. We made it back. Like we had fun. There was the appropriate amount of like tears, whether it's like fighting over a sand toy or like sunscreen in the eyes. But we had a really special time. And so it's little things like that, or it's even starting this podcast. Like I set out to do something and I did it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it was perfect the entire time. It doesn't mean that I wasn't scared or stressed out or I didn't make a mistake or it could have been better at some points. But I did it and I'm doing it. And so there is this there is a sense of knowing within myself. And that's a conversation I've had a lot with other women in their 30s and also just with like my therapist of like, I just want to get to a place where there's like the core of me is just calm and it just knows. Like there's just a sense of knowing within myself. And I feel like I'm starting to listen to her and understand her more. And like it feels really good. But it absolutely has taken me a very long time to get to this point. And it's so hard to Annie Lamont has the perfect, it's a cuss word and I won't say it, but she calls it KF radio. And it's like all the noise of like everyone else out in the world and what everyone thinks of you or what you should be doing. It's like turning down KF radio so you can hear yourself. And I feel like that's what I've been trying to practice as much as possible in this last year. And I'm finally just now maybe starting to get the hang of it.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
That's
it's
amazing. Well, we're getting the sign that we're already out of time, but Candice, what a pleasure to meet you and to hear your story. And it's just, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I think what your journey has been is really going to enlighten and help so many people.
Inspire.
Inspire.
Well,
and I hope I can find some of the peace you're talking about, because I feel like as women, we all are looking for that. And I think, I think everybody is, there's that calm that you want to find inside of you, and kudos to your journey on that. Sending you lots of positive energy your way on that.
Thanks. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. This is a great way to start the day. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.